Welcome to the Brie Pod. I'm here with me, Brie. So the past few weeks we've been discussing all about the baby, and I want to kind of segue a little bit to talk about the latest. Well, I shouldn't say the latest, but the recent trial between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because on the Brie Pod, as you know, we talk a lot about um, calling back your power, domestic violence. We've spoken to survivors, counselors, um, and various people that have been affected by domestic abuse, whether it be physical, emotionally, or mentally. And the thing is, I know that a lot of you are thinking, oh boy, you want to talk about a celebrity. I think that for the moment, I want to give a perspective from a survivor's point of view. I did this before for the Gabby Petito case with Brian Landry, and I wanted to do it again because I think that there's a lot of importance from this case that needs to be shared. And note, this is for law purposes and not getting sued. Everything that I am about to say is all in my opinion. I am not a doctor. I am not a lawyer, and I am not a judge or a jury. But I am a survivor of domestic violence, and I know that this take is sought, or not sought, but felt by many of us. Obviously, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm going to speak on behalf of my own circumstances. So, anyway, let's get to it. So, as you all know, this case has been quite the whirlwind when it comes to everything that they have been talking about. And if you haven't watched it, I'm not going to really bring in too much of the trial itself, just more so an over analysis because there are main points that I just wanted to share that are overview. And also, the trial is still currently going on. So it's out there where anybody can go and see it. So if you want to watch it, you're able to view it. TikTok has a bunch of clips from it, or you can watch it live every day or the replays. But the reason why this is so big for me is because as a survivor, it has triggered me. And when I say triggering, I mean that it's triggered being in that position, being in the position of watching your abuser lie and allegedly lie about everything that has happened or hasn't happened, and having to fight for your right and your power. I don't know how I would personally react if I actually had to be in court with my abuser, because that would just be another world. And I know that this case is so intense because of the allegations of alleged rape and allegations of alleged violence. Now, one thing that both sides have, well, sort of both sides, have admitted to is that there have been drugs and alcohol involved. So that is not going to be something we really talk about on this podcast, just because that's kind of already been put out there. Now, I'm not looking to turn this into a witch hunt. So you'll not hear me say anything negative toward the party that I disagree with, just because I think it's important to stay clear-minded, and I want to make sure that I'm sharing just the perspective from being a survivor and watching another survivor go through this publicly and loudly. And so I'm sure you're not going to be surprised when I say, for me, watching the trial, I have felt that Johnny is the victim. Now, were there things said back and forth? Absolutely. I'm not saying he's full blown correct, and I'm not saying um, Amber's full blown correct. They both had a very toxic relationship. I feel like that is basically out there and pretty much well known fact about them. But I, as a survivor, relate a lot more with Johnny than I do with Amber. With Amber, there's a lot of things that she says and does that are eerily, is that a word? Um, eerily alike with my own circumstances. The way that she gaslights him, the way that she blames everybody else, which for everything when it comes to things that have happened. She's so quick to throw everybody around her under the bus. It's unreal. And the way that she makes you feel like you're in another, like he's in another reality. Now I know that you would say, well, this isn't your relationship, and that's true. But I also think that as a survivor, when you start to see things that goes back to the triggering, when you feel reminded of past events or past circumstances, that is where it's coming from. It's um seeing things that were like in your own relationship versus in what we're seeing publicly in theirs. Now I know that we don't have everything, and I know that um the courts can only get really so much of what they give. Um, but I think that this case is important because of the fact that we have a male who is, and there's evidence of this, has been in an abusive relationship. And it's not often that you see a man admitting that he has been abused, and that's for the unfortunate reasons of what society has put out there. Now, I'm not saying that women have not been abused, because I do believe full well and know full well that women um, statistically are more so abused, but men are less likely to come forward because of the way we treat them, um, of how they should react if a woman hits them, or how they should be a man, or not be such a sissy, or whatever the unfortunate terminology is said to them. So it's not easy for a man to come out and say, she, abused me. And I think it's important that we shed light on that. And if Johnny Depp is the man that is going to shed that light, then I think that's important because of the fact that he is he's a celebrity, he's well known. That's one of, I think, the best ways to get this kind of information out there is the awareness. I'm not saying it should have happened at all. I'm just saying that I'm not looking down on this case the way that a lot of people have been, where they're like, why are we watching this? There's so many other issues that need to be addressed. And it's very important to know, just because people are focused on an issue or they're advocating for a certain thing, it doesn't mean that that's their only thing that they're advocating for. And for some reason, I feel like when it comes to the media, and when I say media, I mean everybody, not just the news. I mean everybody that's on social media. For some reason, it feels like people are all like, "Oh, well, because you're watching this case, that's the only thing that you're fighting for." I don't agree with that. I know a lot of people that are watching this case that are fighting for the causes in their life in other ways. or have been still at the same time with their social media accounts, or however they, choose to that platform that they choose to use. So I think that's just such a broad thing to say about people, and to realize that there's a lot of issues, right? There are a lot of things out there that need to be addressed and need to um, have awareness. And as long as we're doing our part and we're doing the best that we can to make a step forward toward those goals and those in our passions, I don't think it's necessary to attack people and be like, oh, well, you should be focused on this instead. I know a lot of people focus on multiple things that are doing the best that they can, with the resources that we have. So, with that being said, in my opinion, from a survivor's perspective, I have felt more of an attachment to Johnny, and not because he is a celebrity, uh, but because if you take out the celebrity out of Johnny and you take out the celebrity out of Amber, these two are still human beings, and things can happen to celebrities. For some reason, and rich people, for some reason, we seem to think that because they're rich, they have everything perfect in life and their lives are just scot-free and just clear of anything. But they do face, you know, everyday things like us. Now, I'm not talking financial status, I'm talking life. Like, you cannot escape from life. You cannot escape from the, the ups and downs of life. It does not matter how much money you have in your pocket. Um, so I also bring that up because I know people attack that as well. Um, but the main thing that I feel with this is that it's important that we do see a perspective that we don't get to see because our society doesn't allow it. We don't want to think that men can be abused. I don't know why it's like that. But in this case, with the evidence presented, with the receipts, as you call it, that have been shown, it really seems as though Amber is the abuser and Johnny is the victim. Now, that's not to say, again, that they both don't have their own unfortunate relationships with alcohol and drugs. That's clear. That's been said. But aside from that, the allegations that Amber has made on Johnny have so far looked very fabricated. And I know that that isn't something that wants to be heard. And it's something that's hard to talk about because of the fact that, a lot of times victims are the ones that are told that they're crazy or that they're bad or that they, um, that never happened. And I think that's why it's so difficult in this case, because I don't think anyone wanted to go in and be like, oh, Amber's just full of crap. We're not going to listen to her. I think it's been very hard because I know many of us that agree with, how we feel. We tried to go in this with a full open mind to hear both sides out because of the fact that when you are, especially when you're a survivor of it, it happens. People question you. People are like, that didn't happen. And that's why I'm not coming in here and going to make a mockery of Amber or attack her or say anything nasty, because I think at the end of the day, I don't fully know for a fact if he, and I'm not going to claim that I know if it happened or not. I can only say from my own opinion and watching what has been given that it doesn't look as though it has happened. But also, being a survivor, I'm not going to say that it didn't happen fully and say I 100% know this, because I know what it feels like to not be believed or heard. Um, I'm only coming from my opinion of how it feels for me, and I know that I relate a lot more with Johnny because a lot of the things that Amber has said and done are so alike to what my um I almost said my ex, but he was my ex. What my ex has said and done, and how he had to have his allies and he had to have people that believed him. And um, some of the wording that Amber has used has been a little bit scary. For example, saying, telling him you shouldn't go forward with going to court because how can anyone believe a man to be someone that has been physically abused by a woman? And I know that she says she didn't mean it in that sense, but that is a very scary way to go about it, I personally believe, because it's 100% gaslighting that person and discrediting them, and it's exactly what an abuser does to their victim. Um, and I'm not saying that mean things haven't been said about each other on both ends. I mean, when you hear the texts and you hear the recordings, both parties have said some very intense things to each other. But I also know by being in my own relationship that I didn't say the nicest things either um, to my ex and former abuser. And something I noticed about Amber is that she does, and I'm not a doctor, so this is only opinion hearsay from me. She does have narcissistic traits. And what a narcissistic personality disorder is, it's a mental condition in which people have an inflated sense of their own importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, and many troubled relationships, and also a lack of empathy for others. Um, and the reason why I see the narcissist in her is because I attracted narcissist. My abuser was a narcissist. I dated narcissistic um, men, and I've also attracted narcissistic friends that have come into my life and are no longer a part of it. But it took a lot of healing to get to that place. Um, but the thing about a person that is a narcissist is it has nothing to do with um, and this is the thing that Amber's been showing a lot in this trial is she's worried about her image, which is understandable. They're both celebrities, so I mean that really is their bread and butter. But she's so worried about her image. It feels like she's just pulling things out of a hat. And I say it because she says when she talks about the traumas and the things that have happened to her, um, it's so easy for her to say that, like, especially when she talks about being raped by him multiple times and she talks about being physically beaten. And if these allegations are true, they are so malicious and vicious and disturbing that it is scary um, if they are true. So, but at the same time, it's like if they're not true, that is some serious allegations to be made on someone. Uh, with what she's been describing, it's not good. And I'm not saying I'm not trying to discredit her, but it's her own words and like her own evidence is what's discrediting her. And I know that that's not easy to say because I know it's not easy to get evidence to show that someone has hurt you. I know that that's very hard, especially if it's mental. Um, but there's a lot of stuff that she, timeline wise, was able to take evidence wise and show, but she didn't show the other stuff. So that part is a bit confusing, and that's why it's made it very hard to relate to her or to see the truth in it. And I'm it's sad because if it is true, she's not doing a good job of showing that. And I know that again, it shouldn't go down to like if it's a good job or not, but still it's just been very difficult and triggering. In the clips that we do get, in the clips that we do hear, in the text messages that we do hear, um, it's hard not to feel for Johnny because I I just feel like as a survivor, just relate more to him and how he's trying to make it work, how he's trying to calm her down, he's trying to keep the peace because the biggest thing is when you go up against your abuser, you know, the main goal is to keep everything calm so that it doesn't reach to a level of um, intensity, so that it doesn't get to a point where it's scary. Um, and watching the way that she speaks of her friends, of her family, of people around her is such a narcissistic way about her. And I see it. And I'm not trying to be rude. It's just, it's hard not to see it. And it's hard not to feel this sense of like my like inner trigger of like, don't trust this person. Don't trust this person. Because she's doing everything that I've seen in my life a narcissist do. Again, I'm not saying that both parties are perfect because I know that Johnny definitely has a lot going on with him emotionally. I do think that both parties had really horrible upbringings, and I do believe that it affected both of them. Um, and I do think that they both are broken in their own way, and it's sad to watch too. You know, it's sad that um, they both have had to live their lives the way that it, life gave it to them. They both do, I don't want to say humble beginnings, but they, before they were celebrities, they both came from not so great homes, broken homes. And I see that. And that's why, again, I'm not gonna come in here and, you know, be like, attack her, this is that, because there's so much depth to both of them. It's hard. It's hard not to get why they are the way that they are. But at the same time, it's also very hard to watch who I feel the abuser is, such as Amber, gaslight Johnny in front of the entire world since 2016, where she has changed her story multiple times. She's changed the circumstances multiple times, and he has remained the same way. He's remained with the same story, and he's been as honest as he can be about his own background. And I say as he can be because I'm sure it's not, I'm sure it wasn't going to be a secret that the drug use and alcohol use were going to come out. That was bound to happen. Um, I do believe the reason why Johnny did this was not because he's looking to win a defamation case. I'm sure that they'll be excited if they do win, but I don't think he was looking to do it because um, he was looking to actually win. I think that he had been put under under the eye of the media and what Amber was saying back in 2016 as an abuser. And this was his only way of being able to put it out there that he's not this monster that was said, that she has said about him. Now, I say this because this is again from my own opinion and from the evidence and from the sources and the things that she said she has done that she hasn't done. It's and I know that it's not easy to go up against a narcissist, um, especially if your abuser is a narcissist. The one thing that they will do when you try to go up against one is they're going to get their revenge on you. And it doesn't have to be physical. It doesn't always have to be physical. It can be mentally, emotionally. They know what buttons to push. They know how to make you feel weak. Um, they know how to get to you. And one thing that many people will tell you, including counselors and therapists, is that when it comes to a narcissist or anybody that is under that has any information about narcissist, like has learned it, and they'll tell you that it's not easy to go up against one because they don't like that, number one. And number two, they'll make sure that you pay for it. And I know this from my own experience. Um, and the reason why I also feel that Johnny is the victim, more so by Amber, because there's a difference in how they tell their stories. Amber tells her stories with a lot of details that I think are unnecessary, that um, that seem very out of place. And I know that we shouldn't be analyzing how someone tells their story, but if you listen to any of the episodes, the survivors that are on this podcast or anybody that you watch out there that have shared their story and shared their voice, it's not the same way. It's when you go back into that place and you relive that moment, it's not easy to come out of that trigger or PTSD. And she very quickly can come out of a question that talks about a serious trauma and go out of it and just be like, oh, what's the next question? I'm going to answer that. And to me, that creeps me out because when I think of my own um, story and my own, survivors' trauma and PTSD, it's not easy to just be like, okay, let me answer the next question. I go in back and I relive that moment. I can tell you how I felt, how I was scared for my life. I can tell you that I could show you the way that he was going to hit me with the laptop. I can show you the way with my voice and how he spoke to me and what he was upset about. But the little details when she brings up the dirty carpet, the dirty floor, the dog stepping on a bee, these things do not make sense to me because for me, with my own personal experience, my thoughts, I don't even know if I can't think if there was a dog or a cat there. Like, I'm thinking more so on how I was scared to death and how I'm afraid for my life, how I can't look at that person anymore. I can't say that person's name without feeling uncomfortable. If I was put into a room with that person, I would feel uncomfortable. And, you know, she's it's so easy for her to just stare at him and stare at him and stare at him and try to get a reaction and talk about how beautifully their relationship was. And for me, I don't know. I can say that for my own relationship, were there good moments? I'm sure, but the not so great moments outweighs those good moments. Like I can remember all the bad things versus all the good, and it's not easy to talk about that person in such a light that she's done about Johnny. Like she was able to say that their first kiss was amazing and that all these things were so beautiful about him and she loved him so much, and then go to a very brutal scene, a very scary scene, and then say that she just woke up the next day and decided she's not going to do anything about that and she'll just continue in the relationship. And I know, again, I know that that's not for me to judge, but it's hard to say with all the things that she has said he has done, how would you not be afraid? Because for me, in my own relationship, you know, I can't say that it ever got to a point of the allegations that Amber is saying that happened to her. With my own relationship, that did not happen. It was more so mentally than physical. Physical started later, um, and it was definitely not to that degree. Um, and I still felt scared for my life and that he was going to hurt me because he made that gesture. He stalked me. There were things that he did that made me feel scared. And for her having way worse, if allegedly way worse than I've ever seen, be like, yeah, I didn't feel anything, nothing happened, and I'm okay. Like she's so nonchalant about it. It's really hard to accept that. And maybe that is a clouded vision for me, but I am just again coming from a survivor's perspective, from my own experience. Um, and it's hard for me to understand how she's able to be so nonchalant because to this day, I know that for myself, I don't ever want to be in a room with the person that hurt me. Um, I don't want to get to know him. I don't love him. I don't have many good things to say, um, like she is saying. So that part, I guess, confuses me. Um, and the other part is just the things that she said. I've been told by, you know, my abuser. I've been gaslighted. I've been told that, you know, I was acting a certain way and other people are noticing and um who's going to believe me? Who's ever going to want to be with me? So I think that's why it's been hard for me watching it. But at the same time, I also like that it is highlighting and not in a when I say like, it's very loose. I just I'm not looking down on this case and be like, oh, well, this is like a waste of our time. I don't think it's a waste of our time. I think that this is important because I think that there are men out there that have voices that have not been heard. And I hope that this helps um, those that have been abused to be able to come forward. Um, and because I know that it's not easy to come out into this world and admit something like that. And the other part of it is that I think this was Johnny's only way, again, my own thought, of being able to expose his abuser and narcissist. He had no other way. Um, Back when she claimed what had occurred initially, the Me Too movement was going on, and the reason why I say the Me Too movement, the Me Too movement, is because personally, I did go through a nasty relationship that involves domestic violence. But I think when you say me too, I feel there are far more um, unfortunate and scary things that have happened to women that are much deeper and um, much more than my own case. So it's not me trying to discredit um, that movement. It's just I don't want to say that I'm not saying Me Too for myself because I feel like there are women out there that have had so much happen to them that it needs to be heard and said and seen. And I'm not gonna, I don't want to take any, um, I'm not trying to say credit, but like, I don't want to attach myself to something that I think is so much more important and bigger than me. Um, that's why I say the Me Too. Um, and I'm not really sure if the circumstance that I was in is truly considered Me Too because I think from my understanding, Me Too was not just physical abuse, but also rape, and that never happened with my experience. So um, I wanted to add that side note because it's not me trying to take it out because I think that movement is so important, and I think that that movement should keep um, being an influence, an impact, really, in our lives because there are women and men that need to be heard that were not heard, that were told that they were liars, that were told they were crazy. And that's again another reason why I'm not full blown attacking Amber because I don't, just like everybody else, the only people that know what actually happened is Amber and Johnny. The only thing that we can go based off of is what we have today with the evidence um, and receipts, but that doesn't mean that's why I'm not trying to discredit anything fully. But I am saying the opinion of where I'm coming from. So, with that being said, back when Amber, was talking about what happened to her, Me Too was very huge, and it was, we want to believe, because there's this campaign that went around that said "Believe all women." Of course, we want to believe women, but we also need to realize that it can't just be gender based. We need to believe people, believe the humans that have had this happen. And it's happened to many humans out there. Um, and that's why I think for Johnny, I don't think he was worried about losing anything from this because he already lost um, movies, he lost money. And it's not to say he wasn't rich anymore. He's still been rich, but even then, when you are um, a victim, which I feel personally that he is, and you're constantly being told you're the abuser and you're the attacker, um, there's really nothing left to lose at this point. And I think that's why he did the defamation case, because if you go back through and you go online and you see the likelihood of winning a defamation case, it's very unlikely just because it's so hard to prove. It's not to say that Johnny hasn't won, and I don't really like the term winning because nobody wins this really at the end of the day. Amber's not winning in this, and Johnny's not winning in this because it's all of their dirty laundry aired out for everyone to see, for everyone to judge, for everyone to put their input on. So nobody really, really wins. But in this case, I feel that is why he chose to go forward with the defamation case because it had nothing, really, at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with money for both of, well, I can't say for both of them because one of them did have some questionable things happen in the courtroom money wise, but it's about their image and about who they are. And a lot of people think that that's a negative thing because they're celebrities, but I think at the end of the day, it's probably way more difficult to show who you are when the world decides who you are. Um, and I do think that Johnny had a more difficult route to take because it was, she even said it in her audio recordings to him, that who's going to believe him? He's just a guy. He's a man. And I think that it was important for him to have this case because it brought awareness, but it also brought his power back. As a victim, it brought his power back from his abuser because he has had the power for a while. Wow. And I think that as you know, with this podcast, it's all about calling back your power and calling back your voice. And he is getting that moment to call back his voice and his power. And I think that that is why this case went down. That's why it's been publicized and in the media, is it was the only way he could go up against his abuser and the narcissist there. Because, like I said, when you try to go up against a narcissist, it's not simple, and a lot of times it doesn't work at all. And you really end up just being able to put up boundaries with them, or to hopefully have a way to get them out of your lives, which is not easy either because they don't make it easy. So for me, I am proud of him in the fact that he's getting his voice back and he's taking his power back. And it's all within the receipts. It's all, the proof is in the pudding. I'm not saying 100% proof because, again, that is not my place. But that's how I have felt watching this. And from a survivor's perspective, it's been intense. It's like, it's hard not to put yourself in the shoes of them and think of yourself, like, if you had to face your abuser in court, what would that be like? And honestly, that's why I say again, like, I relate more to Johnny, because it would be very difficult to look at her. It would be very difficult to share my side without telling you how I felt, how it felt to me, how I was scared. And you can tell with the way that they both tell their own stories that he, I feel, is coming from a place of sincerity. He's showing you the movement she made toward him, the feeling. And for some reason, when Amber says what happened to her, she's able to be outside of that person. And it's almost like she's digging deep to try to find the emotions to go with that. And maybe I'm wrong. I mean, again, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know how it works for everybody. I can only speak for my own self. And so it's been difficult. It's been hard to watch, but also it's hard not to watch because you're curious on, like, how did this go about? How did this happen? You know, like, which obviously it's not, closure is not fully going to happen for either party, but I do feel that at the end of this, no matter if Johnny wins this trial or not, I think that he was able to shed light on what people didn't want to believe, because people did gaslight him and people did tell him that he was the abuser, he was the aggressor. And I'm sure that wasn't easy, because I know it's not easy when you are told that you are all these things when it was actually the person that, you know, the other person. And again, I don't have the full 100%, I can say this for sure, but just from what I have seen, that is what I've felt. And, you know, like, I'm not asking you to come to I'm not saying come to Team Johnny or come to Team Amber. You can make your own analysis and opinion of what's going on from what you see, but I needed to share this because It definitely highlights on a lot of important subjects for me. It touches base on mental health. Both of them clearly have a lot of things that have affected them throughout their lives. Um, it's definitely gotten into the domestic violence portion of life, and that's really something that, as you know, I'm such an advocate for of being a survivor. Um, and then the other side of it is the fact that, it can happen to anybody. It does not matter what you look like, how much you make, who you're with, um, your personality, where you came from, your background. Like, domestic violence does not discriminate. And that's something that we learned back when we were going through the DV series in October. So I wanted to share this just because it is a recent event that has been talked about a lot, and it does really coincide with the pre-pod. And it's something that has been on my mind, and so I felt like it was time to say something about it. But for what I hope that happens in the end is I really hope that both parties get what they need, which is they both do need help in some manner of way, because at the end of the day, both parties have been through some intense, brutal upbringings, and at the end of the day, you just hope that they will be able to move forward and start the healing process. But of course, first, there's a lot to happen before that can ever occur. So we'll see how it goes. I know that I think that May 27th, they're going to decide for this particular case what's going to happen. But at the end of the day, I do feel that a lot of important impacts are happening because of this. So, on that note, with that, you are loved, you are worthy, you are cherished, and I am proud of you. Until next time on the Brie Pod. Bye!